Large amounts of timber, stones, bricks. Some of the timber is being used to fuel enormous bonfires here that are clearly being built as some sort of defensive precaution, and other parts of timber are being used to reinforce, build up the barricades in the direction that we believe the police are currently stationed there.
How big is that front line crowd, Phil?
Hundreds, certainly. These are the ones I guess I'd be describing as the more hardcore element, the ones that are, as I say, seemingly prepared to put themselves directly in harm's way, try and repel any possible police advance. These are the ones that we've seen at the front line of many of the clashes that have taken place on the streets of Kiev in recent weeks and months. They are wearing helmets, they are wearing gas masks. Some of them have built shields from pieces of timber. There is no evidence that they have any sort of offensive weaponry, none that I can see. At the moment, the only thing they seem to be throwing in the direction of where we believe the police are fireworks, which make a little bit of a noise and some colour in the air, but beyond that, not too much. Having said that, as I say, we're seeing lots of stones and bricks being passed forward to these guys on the front line. So there is perhaps the potential that some of them are prepared to actually strike back, to fight back, if there is some sort of move on the square. But many of the people here today have been saying they won't fight back, but they will resist. They will try and slow down any sort of police operation here in
Phil, thank you for that. Phil Black is in the square in Kiev, a day of violence, deadly violence. 6 police killed, according to authorities, 15 others killed, according to the opposition. We're going to take a very short break here on CNN. That was Connect World. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Tonight, you join us as fires rage in the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. At least 9 people have been killed and dozens more injured in violence between police and protesters. The UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has appealed for restraint and is urging all sides to engage in meaningful talks. The European Union's top diplomat has condemned the violence, but the Ukrainian and Russian governments say Europe is to blame for interfering and stoking the unrest. The U.S. government says is appalled by the violence. It's urging President Yanukovych to restart a dialogue with opposition leaders immediately. The U.S. ambassador to Ukraine spoke to CNN a short time ago.
We have on the phone from Kiev the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt. Thanks for joining us, sir. What's your reaction to what's going on right now in Kiev?
Well, obviously, we're appalled by the violence that's unfolding. It's been a terrible day in Ukraine's history. We're hoping that the government and the opposition will take immediate steps to de-escalate. You can hear in the background right now the bells at St. Michael's Monastery, where they're calling people to come to the defense of the Maidan. It's clear there are still thousands of people out on the plaza right now, and any effort to take that ground by violence would produce atrocious casualties. So we are encouraging the quickest possible return to political dialogue, and we hope that will happen this evening.
And what is the U.S.'s role in all of this?
Well, first of all, we are friends of Ukraine. We want to see a Ukraine that is stable and democratic and economically successful. So we've been involved closely with our European partners throughout this crisis, helping to encourage dialogue, making clear to all sides that violence is unacceptable, and making clear our preparedness to work closely with a new Ukrainian government, which we hope they'll be able to put together with a focus on getting the country healthy economically and building the kind of broad dialogue that's going to be necessary to rebuild democratic politics here.
And on the government side, there have been accusations, especially after that leaked phone call between you and Victoria Nuland, the Assistant Undersecretary of State, regarding possible scenarios in which the U.S. could get itself involved, try to exert pressure to try to find a solution to end this crisis. You know, how do you respond to these accusations that the U.S. is meddling, essentially, and clearly taking sides?
Yeah, well, again, I'm not going to talk about any phone calls, but I'll say, our role has been an appropriate diplomatic, working closely with our European partners and engaging closely with the government. We are Ukraine's friend in this exercise, and we have made clear our view that the solution at this point is a new political compact and the creation of a broad, multi-party government that can begin the process of political healing here. I don't consider it meddling when we're in the business of helping to build bridges between the government and the opposition. And in fact, I'm standing in front of the foreign ministry right now, and the government has on several occasions publicly welcomed the role that the United States has played in helping to encourage communication here. The United States has invested a great deal of money and political capital over the years, helping to build a Ukraine which is sovereign and independent and democratic, and we certainly don't want to see that slip through our fingers now.
Lastly, I want to ask you about something you tweeted. We believe Ukraine's crisis can be solved via dialogue, but those on both sides who fuel violence will open themselves to sanctions. What does that mean exactly?
What it means is that all policy instruments are on the table for the United States at this point, and we have already exercised authorities here to revoke the visas of several officials directly involved in violence, and we've made clear that additional steps will be taken by the United States to the extent there is grave violence against peaceful demonstrators. Obviously, we're still in the process of picking up the pieces of what's happened today, and as you've reported, it's an extremely dynamic and delicate situation still. But the United States wants to see the politics off the street, back in Ukraine's democratic institutions.
All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Jeffrey Payat, the U.S. Ambassador to Kiev.
And that was our Hala Garani just a short time ago. Now, a brief reminder of how this conflict began. On November 21st, President Viktor Yanukovych withdrew from a proposed political and trade agreement with the European Union. That brought protesters into the streets by the tens of thousands who demanded a new government. But on December 3rd, the opposition failed to pass a no-confidence vote in parliament, keeping the current government in power. 2 weeks later, President Yanukovych entered into an agreement with Russia that cut Ukrainian debt and gas prices, but distanced the country even further from the EU. On January 16th, the government passed strict anti-protest laws, fueling another round of protests. And on January 22nd, 4 people were killed, the first lives lost in the conflict. The confrontation shows little signs of dying down. You are looking at live pictures of the scene in Kiev right now. The government has issued a warning that movement will be restricted in central Kiev from midnight, which is just under 1 hour's time. They say it is to prevent the violence from escalating. Victoria Butenko is in Kiev. She joins us now live on the line. Victoria, many people concerned that we are nearing what will be a violent showdown. What can you tell us in terms of what's happening on the streets?
Well, it looks like what you've just mentioned. All these events are happening actually within three blocks in the center of the city. But of course, the unrest is now spreading all over the country, starting with the Western Ukraine, where people started taking over city administrations and regional administrations. There are still thousands of people in the center of Kiev now. The rest of the city is quite empty. The metro is not working. There is very little transport, and the city is announced tomorrow is going to be a day off for businesses.
Victoria, the government has said that movement will be restricted. Do we see any signs that the protesters are leaving in any way or showing any change in their behavior?
Well, of course, if the metro system is shut down and there is no traffic allowed in the city, that would actually prevent people coming in support of the protesters from all over the country to enter. There are a lot of the people on the square now, but it is, of course, difficult for them to get to the spot of the protest. So people trying to give themselves, to give others rights and connect to connect to the people who need a ride to the center of the city through social networks. But that number, of course, is quite limited.
Right. So, but there is an attempt for more people to join in as opposed to people leaving. We are watching the scenes live, Victoria. I don't know what your vantage point is, but we do see what appears to be some fires. It looks like fireworks going off as well. What is the mood of the protesters? Are they afraid? I mean, we're only an hour or so from when the government said that they were going to begin something.
Well, if you look at the picture of the protest, it changed a lot, and it used to be a lot of the women on the square, people coming with the kids. Of course, now it is mostly men. People use whatever kind of stuff they can use as weapons. They use fireworks, they use sticks, Molotov cocktail, even pavement bricks to be able to stand against the police. They burn tires, which creates a lot of the dark smoke and prevents police from seeing the protesters and shooting at them. So the picture of the protest is mostly men being on the square and being against the police.
And Victoria, do we see any sign of the police or any government forces starting to gather or organize themselves in any way? Are they present in the square right now?
The police forces are present in the square. They are present around the square, and when entering and closing the square, they basically making the circle smaller and trying to get the protesters inside. Sometimes they pull back from the attack, but overall it looks like that they do want to clear the square of the protest.
All right, Victoria, thank you very much, Victoria Butenko, for us live on the scene there. We'll come back to you in just a bit. Let's get more on this right now from Nick Payton-Walls. He is in Sochi tonight, but he has covered this story extensively for us. Nick, it seemed just a few days ago that there was progress being made. It seemed that things had calmed down, that the two sides were talking, and now we find ourselves in a situation where the violence has escalated once again.
I think it really betrays the absolute lack of trust between two sides here. We had potentially a vote happening in Parliament today, which could have reeled back some of the